I'd like to give a warm welcome to Rich Martini for coming.
My journey to this podium really goes through IANDS. So I had decided to make a film. How many are familiar with my work? Not so many. Okay, very good. Well, you will be. So I decided to make a film about hypnotherapy. And how did I come upon that topic? It's because a close friend of mine passed away back in '96. Literally died in my arms and started coming to visit me. And I had that profound experience that some people have where, oh, she's here. That's weird. And I started to, at first I thought, oh, okay, I'm imagining it, it must be. But then she started showing me things and taking me places. And I thought, if she can take me somewhere, how can I go visit her on my own without a spacesuit, let's say? And ultimately, before she passed, she was talking about this recurring dream that she had. She said, I think I'm going to another universe. I said, what do you mean? She said, I don't know, I have this recurring dream. I'm in a classroom somewhere, not this universe, but another one. Everyone's dressed in white, and they're speaking a language I've never heard before, but somehow I completely understand. And I thought, oh, okay, that's the morphine drip talking. I didn't really understand that. Classrooms? Somewhere else? What? But we were very close. And the day she died, her very close friend called me and said, oh, I had the most wonderful dream about Luana last night. Luana Andrews is her name, an actress. And she said she was in the fourth dimension in a classroom, and everyone was dressed in white. It's so weird you would have that dream. And then I mentioned it to the hospice nurse, who said, that was her recurring dream. She said it all the time. Classrooms in the afterlife. Well, I thought she had been a Buddhist. And I thought, well, maybe, that's how you get into that class. Maybe there's some version of that. So she was with the SGI group, Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, that group, but it's all fundamentally based on what Buddha had to say. But I then took a job in New York City, and I was working on the Charles Grodin show and producing it. And one day I read an article about Robert Thurman. If you're familiar with him, he's Uma Thurman's dad. He was a Tibetan monk. And he had written a book about the Tibetan Book of the Dead. And I thought, well, maybe they know. I mean, it's literally called The Dead. Maybe there's some part of that journey. So I ended up taking a class with him at Columbia University and studying Tibetan philosophy, which was way above my head. Going into his class felt like meteors flying by. Just the things that he would say, I'd have to bring a dictionary with me to open it up. Like, what? Concomitants? What does that mean? But ultimately, Bob and I went to Tibet, and I went to India with him, and I made some documentaries about those journeys and those trips. But while I was there, I had some unusual, let's say, experiences that were contrary to what the religious philosophy of reincarnation is. It was contrary to what my experience was. So when I went to visit my friend Luana, when I had that experience, I was fully conscious and fully aware that that's her, and there she is, and she's sitting somewhere and looking at me, and I'm talking to her. And in the between lives, the way it's sort of taught in these philosophical practices is that once you die, you become like a wisp of smoke, and based on your karma, you are attracted to that next lifetime. That's kind of fundamentally that they say. But that wasn't my experience. I didn't feel like a wisp of smoke while I was in this other universe visiting her. So I thought, well, I have to set that aside, just keep forging ahead. And then I picked up a book by Michael Newton, and he was talking about his method of putting people under deep hypnosis for 4 to 6 hours. And the first chapter I was reading, the guy said, I see myself in a classroom in the afterlife, and everyone's dressed in white. And I thought, okay, well, if that's not a sign, I don't know what is. I better take a look at this work. And nowadays, filmmaking is putting a camera up somewhere recording it. And I thought, well, I can do that. So I contacted the Newton Institute and said, gee, I'd like to make a documentary about Michael Newton. They said, sorry, he's retired. But we're having a conference in Chicago, my hometown. And if you want to come by and visit, you can, and maybe interview some of the people there. Which many people would say, nah, like you're not really opening the door. But I thought, I'll give it a shot. So I went, and I met Michael, who has subsequently passed away about a couple months ago. But I met Michael, and he, after talking to me a little bit, he said, I'm going to give you my last interview. Okay. I mean, he didn't know it was his last interview. It turned out to be his last televised interview. So we spoke for about 3 hours. I'd read all his book, and I understood what he was saying. I didn't quite believe it, because I always carry a healthy dose of skepticism. Belief is one thing. When somebody tells you something and you haven't experienced it, that's belief. But when you do experience it, then it becomes experience. So for example, if I said, let's jump into a pool together, and you say, what's jumping into a pool? What does that mean? And I go, well, it's big, and it's refreshing, and it's cold, and it's liquidy, and it's like flying, but you're in this liquid substance. It becomes confusing until you actually do it. Once you experience it, it's a different experience. So what I did was, in the process of filming Michael said, well, why don't you try one of our sessions? Why don't you see where you go? And I thought, well, I'm not really a journalist if I jump in. But wait a second, George Plimpton did that in all of his books, right? Paper Tiger. He actually played with the Detroit Tigers when he wrote that book. So I thought, I can do that. So, like most of us, I didn't know what hypnosis was. I assumed they wave a clock in front of you, and then, you're out. And then suddenly you're awake, and you're like, what did I say? And they, you quack like a duck. No, really? Oh, that's terrible. I assumed that, which is, what they call stage hypnosis. It's something else. Similar, but something else. Hypnosis, as it turns out, is like meditation, which we're going to do today. We're going to do a little meditation. Something that's unusual. It's not like, there's something called mindfulness that people are using in the corporate world and in schools today. They call it mindfulness. It's just a form of meditation. They just don't like to use the word because people assume there's some kind of exercise you have to do with it. You have to learn how to do yoga to meditate. But literally, playing the piano is a form of meditation. Riding a bike, form of meditation, where you're doing one thing and thinking of another. So guided meditation is when someone says to you, let's go somewhere together. Let's get on a boat by a river and float down and picture the river in your mind. That's all they're doing. And you can say, no thanks. You can close your eyes and now you picture a river, or whatever it is. That's what a guided meditation is. It's no more, no less. Science will tell us that while you're asking people to do things, you're suggesting things, right? And science doesn't like it when you suggest something, because then that means they may not have come up with it themselves. That's the conundrum that science has with hypnosis. But, as my point to Dr. Grayson at the University of Virginia, and Dr. Tucker, and Dr. Kelly, all these very smart guys who created IANDS, created this group, when they said to me, it's not a valid science, I said, well, then how do you account for thousands of people across the planet saying the same things under deep hypnosis? It doesn't matter if Michael Newton is asking the questions. It could be Larry Newton. People are saying the same things about the journey. Okay? They said, Rich, we appreciate your fervor, but we have to do a study, and studies are financed mostly by big pharma. If you can make a pill, they'll pay the university to figure that out. So it's very difficult for us to fund a study in hypnosis. And I went, okay. And then I shifted my focus away from hypnosis, per se, to near-death studies. Because the premise would be, if people under hypnosis are seeing another lifetime or another realm, then therefore, somebody who has a near-death experience, they may be experiencing the same realm, just as a matter of logic, right? Mm-hmm. So I thought, let me start examining near-death studies. Aha, wait, one more second. I'm going to ask people who've had a near-death experience to do a between-life session, to do a hypnotherapy session where they can re-examine the journey, what happened to them, even if it happened when they were 5 years old. Hypnosis can do that. Meditation can do that. All right? The thing that's really magical about the brain is there is no delete key. You hear a lot about short-term memory and long-term memory. They've even quantified short-term memory into being, maybe 30 minutes. Somebody gives you a phone number, and if you haven't committed to the long-term part, right? And so where's the long-term part? It's a file, right? Somewhere in your head, supposedly. Supposedly, that's what everybody thinks. We think the brain has the files. So I'm going to give you a phone number, and you're going to put it in your file, and then later I'm going to ask you to access it. After about 30 minutes, they say, it's gone. But is it gone? Turns out when people have a traumatic event, car accident, or an operation, and they put pieces of metal in the brain and stimulate the engram where the phone number was, suddenly it comes back to mind. It was filed in a different place. Now, is the phone number there? Does it exist up there? And that's the conundrum that science is dealing with right now. So Dr. Grayson, if you ever get a chance to watch his talk on YouTube called Is Consciousness Produced by the Brain? It's free. It's about an hour long. He gives numerous cases around the world where people, one example is people had Alzheimer's. Their brain has atrophied. They're no longer able to remember anyone. But then, moments before death, they suddenly remember everything. They remember all their loved ones. He said it's as if they've come back to say goodbye. It occurs sometimes minutes, hours, just prior to the event. Just yesterday, the Institute of Near-Death Studies put on their website a story of a woman in Iceland whose brain had atrophied. And by atrophied, I mean when they do the autopsy after she's died, the brain no longer, there was no reason for her to speak, let alone remember anything. But this woman suddenly recited a poem from memory, sat up in her bed, looked at her son, and said this wonderful poem to him. Now, I don't know I'd love to know what the poem was. But said this poem, imagine if we had one more poem to give to our loved ones, what would that be? What would be the poem? It's almost like you're told, you got one thing to say to your son, make it short. you might, what's that long epic poem by, Gilgamesh? It goes on for days. I have one poem to tell. So this woman spoke, said the poem. Science can't figure that out because, of course, there's no reason for them to access those memories, you see? But as Dr. Grayson points out, it's as if the filters that keep us from this information are dying as well. And what we're accessing is the memory that comes with us through all of our lifetimes. The consciousness that's out there somewhere, that's not here, that's physically somewhere else. That memory, okay? And that's the subject of today's talk. Home. Going home? Being home. Now, what is home? We say it a lot, don't we? Yeah, I'll be out of here, I'm going home. Drink 'em or wear 'em. Can't stay here, but you gotta go home, right? Last call. People say, I'm going home. People call each other homie. What does that mean? What does home mean? Well, we can all say what we think it means for ourselves, because it's such an individual concept. Home. It's different for twins. You sit two twins down, you go, what does home mean to you? One will say, well, it was that wonderful cake that Mom used to make for me. Or if somebody will say, it's like being in my backyard. I can hear the birds and I feel to me, that's home. And then if you ask, well, what's that emotion like? What's the feeling of home? People generally will say the same thing. They say feelings of peace, Often they'll say unconditional love. I always ask, what's conditional love? Conditional love is how we exist on this planet, basically. I love you, but only if you don't step on my foot again. You don't cut me off in traffic. You don't point a gun at me. I will love you. And as Beverly said, in the Institute of Near-Death Studies, people talk about looking for love here on the planet. You try to find that feeling of unconditional love. Where do we find unconditional love? Home. Now, if I said to everybody in the room, I want you to think of home, but I want you to add where I felt unconditional love. And of course, not everybody gets unconditional love at home. We know that. If you live in Syria now, your home's gone. My case, my home, I think to myself, I know where that is. I know where that space is, but it's gone now because my parents passed away and they demolished that house. But I don't care. You ask me where home is and I know where that is. It's there. I felt unconditional love. Safe. So when I do this research and I start to talk to people about home, well, here's how it first entered my world view. In the book Flipside and in the film, I was filming this woman at this conference where I met Michael Newton. And she got to a point where she was remembering her previous lifetime, and she was saying it was a traumatic lifetime. She was dying in Auschwitz, and she was describing that experience. And as the audience, I was there, and my head swimming, like, really? This experience? And then the hypnotherapist, Paul Orend, said, so where do you want to go? Now, after your death, where would you like to go? And she said, I want to go home. And I thought, does she mean Poughkeepsie? Or the place that she said she was from, upstate New York? No, that's the person who was doing the talking. She's talking about Warsaw. What home is she talking about? She didn't mean here. She meant home. Not here. Off stage. Backstage. Not this place. So you know how the song goes. Home, home on the range, where the deer and the antelope. What's up with that? Do deer and antelope play? Are they bitter enemies? I don't know. Why? Does antelope rhyme with anything? Why did you put that together? Why not deers and, the gophers? But he put antelope. Deers and antelope play. Where nary is heard, a word of discouragement, none of that. And what? The skies are not cloudy all day. Okay, so we know the familiarity of that song, which is wonderful because we can all share that feeling. For whoever wrote those lyrics, to him, that was the visual for home for him. It was key, though, to hear that one part, that discouraging word part. Like, why put that in a home about home? Unless you get a lot of discouraging words. Unless your experience on the planet is being discouraged. So let's just examine what home is. What is home? Home is that feeling of unconventional, because we don't experience it here so much, but unconditional love. It's such a weird term because it's not in commercials. We don't, there's no beer commercials. I love you unconditionally. You don't hear it in movies. But when I hear it, it's when people are under hypnosis or they're talking about their near-death experience, or I'm asking them, so what was your experience like as you traveled through the light? What was it like in the light? What was your feeling, your emotion inside of that light? And they say, unconditional love. First they'll say warmth, generosity, unconditional love. And I always think, did they know I wanted to hear that? But they just said it. So the near-death experience, often, and if you look at Dr. Grayson's chart where he listed all of the different emotions that people report, it's high up there. About 70% of all the cases that he's ever studied. People have a feeling. Sometimes they call it nirvana. But you got to ask, what does that mean? It's a Sanskrit word. What does that mean? What is bliss? What does that mean? Well, when you try to define it, you get down to those words. Love, well, unconditional love. In my studies and my research, at some point I was interviewing somebody under deep hypnosis. I'm filming Scott DeTamble. I work with him in Claremont. He's a Newton-trained hypnotherapist. He asked her, this woman, a skeptic that I had brought to this session, he said, where do you want to go? She said, I want to go home. Okay. And then at some point, in her skeptical questions, because she left a list of questions to ask, she said to me on the way to the set, I don't believe what you're talking about. I don't believe there's an afterlife. I don't believe anything happens after you die. I don't believe I had a past life. I said, why are you doing this? She said, because I have a tumor in my ovary, and the doctor told me that hypnosis might be helpful. So that's why I'm doing it. Very practical. Okay. Well, come on, why don't you have a few questions? Just in case you get somewhere. Okay, she says. All right, here are my questions. Is the universe a machine? Does it function like a machine? Okay. What's your next question? This thing about consciousness shifting. Everybody was talking about this in the year 2000. What's the shift in consciousness people are talking about? Is that important? What is that? Okay, that's two. You need probably another one. Okay, what or who is God? Great question. What or who is God? You'd think that would be a deep, profound question or a simple question. Whatever the answer is, I had no idea what was going to be said. So, sure enough, we get to Scott's office, and within 10, 15 minutes, she's in a lifetime in 1820, where she was an old rancher. She names the town in Albuquerque, which I'm Googling, and I find it, this obscure town. We're back in the 1800s. He had married a young girl, and one day this girl had taken him out in a buckboard, and when they got really far into the desert, she had said, I'm really thirsty. Could you get out of the buckboard and get me something to drink? And he had hobbled out of the buckboard, and then she drove away. And now he's standing out cursing after her as she drives away, and then crawls to her tree and dies. Scott says, wow, I'm so sorry. Like, that's tragic. And then she said, what happens next? She said, I feel myself rising up out of this crumpled body. And Scott says, what do you look like? She says, I don't know, I feel like I'm a young girl. I'm like a young sprite of a person. And I'm saying, I always wanted to be a cranky old man. I finally did it. That was her emotion after death. I mean, it was very unusual. Never heard of such a thing. But there she was, glorifying it. And she goes back to what people call a soul group. This is consistent in all of Newton's reporting. Everyone has a guide that helps you, and it will guide you back to your soul group. And back in the soul group, she said, they're all like children. They all seem, there's like 6 of them. They're so playful, and they're trying to get me to do things. And this is really annoying that I have a group of like crazy 6-year-olds that I have to deal with in my soul group, the people I reincarnate with. Scott says, well, what do they want you to do? And she said, they want me to play in their game of tag. And he says, well, describe the game. She said, well, it's a little unusual. You can hide anywhere, except you're invisible. And all 6 of you have to find where you are. And Scott says, you mean on the planet? She said, no, anywhere in the universe. You can hide, and all 6 have to find where your energy is hiding, invisibly. And then she said, and the way they switch it up is they make it on different levels, different realms as well. You can hide in a different realm. Wow. And believe me, this is not something that would come out of this person who was very skeptical about this whole journey. This was an unusual, construct that she had come up with in this game. But you do find it in the research consistently. People talking about their soul groups involved in some kind of fun, unusual, energetic game. So now we get to the questions. At some point she gets to a library. Everybody has one. They don't look the same, just the way home doesn't look the same. But if you ask people to go to their library, they'll describe a place where sometimes they'll say books are there, sometimes they'll say scrolls are there, sometimes they'll say pop-up books are there. where you open up the pop-up book and there's a lifetime and you can dive into it and experience it. One woman said, oh, it's like a hologram. I see it's like a screen. It's an old wooden desk and I sit in front of the screen and I can examine other lifetimes I've had. These reports are consistent. It's not that somebody said, everybody has a library and you should go visit it. It's that people under deep hypnosis across the planet would say, I'm in a library and they're showing me that this is where I chose my lifetime. It's where I chose to be who I am. Recently I filmed a guy talking about this. So this is a therapist in Ventura. He and his wife decided to take a class with Scott and I went over and offered to film it. He'd never had a session like this, never had this experience before, but Scott said, let's go to your life planning session. What's happening? He said, well, I see myself in my library, and I'm going through, like, you used to pull those things out, pull the long wooden thing out, and he said, I'm flipping through the microfiche, and I'm pulling out like a lifetime that I've had, and then I look at it, and I see what was missing. Oh, I never got over that jealousy thing. Okay, I'll use that. And now he says I'm in front of a group of elders, a council, where I'm pitching, like a professor, my next life. He said, almost like a doctoral thesis. And Scott said, well, so what's the response you're getting? He said, they're asking questions. Don't you think you might want to look at this, with another lifetime you forgot to do that? And then I argue, no, I've got this covered. I'm going to grow up in a military family, and this is going to have this journey, and this is going to all be part of my journey. He had the experience of doing that. All right, so my friend, under deep hypnosis, is talking to her librarian. I'm getting around to that. And says, can you answer some questions for us? And the librarian says, oh, you humans, you always feel the need to name things, as if that's going to help you understand it. I thought, oh, he's mocking humans. That's great. Well, okay, what are the questions? Is the universe a machine? And to my surprise, he said, yes. It functions as a mechanism, he said. However, it's sentient. What does that mean? I don't know. I mean, it means it's conscious. So you may have heard of the 100th monkey theory, that, if 100 monkeys work on something and eventually they all figure it out. I don't know if that's true. I think some people have proven that not to be true. But however, it's the idea that if you go through a particularly difficult experience and you learn it and it's new, other people experience it too. That's all I can make of that sentence. I'm just saying, she didn't say it. I didn't say it. The hypnotherapist didn't say it. The cranky old guide said it. The next question, what's this thing about the shift in consciousness? And he said, in terms of the cosmos, it's meaningless. And I was thinking to myself, oh, he means like if Jupiter ran into Saturn, that would be important. But a shift in consciousness is not that important. However, do you want to understand a shift in consciousness? Imagine yourself a crab walking on the ocean floor. You open your eyes and realize you're in an ocean. And in that moment, it reflected on something I had been thinking about. Oxygen is like water. It functions the same. O2 instead of H2O. We don't see it as water, but of course we inhale it, we ingest it, it keeps us alive. We expel it, it comes in, it goes out. Trees create it. Trees look like lungs. They're reverse images of lungs. Lungs do the opposite thing that the trees do. It's a system. It's a literal system that goes back and forth and back and forth. We don't see it that way. If we did, we probably would never smoke a cigarette, never pollute, never do anything that would harm a tree, because that's the thing that keeps us alive. I'm just saying. But that's what I got out of that sentence. Open your eyes and realize you're in an ocean. That's a shift in consciousness. Not that big of a deal, but it is to the little fellow walking on the bottom of the ocean. And now to the big question, what or who is God? Now I'm on the edge of my seat. He says, God is beyond the capacity of the human brain to comprehend. It's not physically possible. There's too much information. I thought, oh, he's ducking the question. Then he said, but you can experience God. Now remember what I said about the pool? Right? Yeah, I actually sat with a bushman, a guy from South Africa who spent his whole life looking for water, and I was talking to him about the swimming pool. We were sitting in a yard, looking around the yard. He was on his way to Washington to lobby for some help. And I said, so did you go for a swim in the pool? He goes, what's a pool? What's the swimming pool? What are you talking about? I said, that thing over there. He's like, I don't understand. Unless he jumps, unless I push him in the pool, he doesn't understand the experience. So, you can't comprehend what God is, but you can experience God. And he said, by opening your heart to everyone and to all things. What does that mean? We're back to that word, unconditional love. Can you open your heart to everyone? People in the White House? People on the other side of the wall? Can you open your heart to everyone? Very difficult. And to all things. Why things? Well, all things are energy agreeing to participate. I mean, atoms literally are clinging to each other in lucite, in wood, on our planet. Somehow they've come together and agreed to be this shape and exist in this environment. We don't think about them, of course, and we can't destroy them with our minds, God forbid. But we can with our mind, with our intellect. We can make things disappear and reappear, etc., etc. But things, if we start treating trees, which we consider to be things, as a sentient part of our universe, it's just a reframe. You know, it's not like you have to leave here today and start hugging every tree that you see, but you know, it's very unusual in this research where I'm talking to someone and they're remembering the between lives realm and they're experiencing it, and I'll say, do you see anything? And they'll say, I see a tree. Then I'll say, can you go over to the tree? Sure. Feel the tree. And then they describe what the tree feels like to them. And then I'll say, hug the tree. What's the feeling? Is there a feeling? Everybody's a little different. Some people say, I feel an energy that seems to be moving up and down. It's like now they're seeing the tree exists over there as an agreement, like it's existing over there in your mind's eye or in the other realm. The tree exists. But when you go to hug it, it's not a tree that's here, because it's different here. I actually had one person that I know who passed away come forward to another friend and say, hug trees because they're different over here. That was literally her quote. But when I ask people under hypnosis or when I'm just talking to them about their experience, I say, let's go hug a tree. And then I'll say, do me a favor, put your hand inside the tree. Because we both know it's a construct that you've created, right? Or that you're seeing, and that exists there. Can you put your hand in a tree? People could say, no, it's not possible. But they do. They put their hand in the tree. And then they tell me what that feels like. So, I know what I'm talking. I was having a conversation with two people this past week who went, stop it. You're giving me too much information. You're overloading my brain. Okay, so I know this is a lot to chew on, because I'm not just talking about near-death studies, which is important, because it points to consciousness existing outside your brain. And I'm sure you're familiar with near-death experiences. I can point you to Mario Beauregard's book, Brain Wars. He's a neuroscientist who does MRIs with people who are clinically dead. He told me this story about a guy who was in the hospital who was being operated on, and they put him under, and he floated around the hospital and saw things, and when he came back, he chastised the doctor because he was making jokes, while he was operating on his brain. And the doctor said, how did you hear that? He said, well, I heard you, and I see that you're wearing orange tennis shoes. Which really made the doctor jump, because this guy had been blind from birth. So, Just 2 days ago, I was filming an interview with a medium. I work with this medium out of Manhattan Beach. Her name is Jennifer Schaefer, jenniferschaefer.com. Good friend. But she called me up out of the blue maybe a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago. Sorry, Jennifer, maybe 2 years ago. And she said, oh, I've read your books, and I think we should meet. And I kind of put her off by saying, well, I thought I was putting her off. I said, mediumship, I don't really understand it. People who go see a medium because they want to predict the future, and they want to know who their soulmate is. Am I going to get this job? And is my boyfriend a chump? And you want to hear the future. In my research, the future's not set. This is what people say consistently. It's not locked in stone. We have free will, so we can say no to a particular lifetime, or we can balk. We can not do the thing we had signed up to do. We chicken out. It's okay. There's nobody doing this. But when people do that, and they do it consistently, then the thing that you thought was going to be the outcome doesn't happen. We all know about mediumship and people who predicted things and they don't come true. And we also know people who consistently say the thing that does come true and it happens. We know that too. And I asked the question, so why are you so wrong with your predictions? Not to her, but I'm talking to somebody on the flip side. And they'll say, well, it's because I'm talking about likely outcomes. It appears that this is going to happen. That's when I'm correct. If it doesn't happen, it's because it didn't turn out to be the likely outcome. Okay, you with me? And the reason I also don't really focus on mediumship, or haven't until now, is because people are talking about their soulmates. And in my research, you meet a soulmate during your near-death experience, or maybe as David Bennett did in his journey, he went between lives and saw his soul group. And you may run into your soul group and you see like, oh, this is my wife in my soul group, which is profoundly disturbing maybe because you're not talking to her or something. It can screw up your journey. Literally, it's like turning the lights on in the theater and going, it's a play! Everybody, it's a play! Well, that screws up the play for everybody else. So people are on their journey, and when they see something that's contrary to what they thought, sometimes it can be disturbing. Okay, you with me? And I always ask, is it okay for these people to hear this information that you're giving to them? And what I hear consistently now is, well, it's about time. They need to hear this. They need to see this. They need to get back on the path they signed up for. They need to go back to who they were or who they wanted to be. Or they say, it's okay, it doesn't matter. It's all right. They can see this information. Seeing your soulmate. So, I said to Jennifer, what do you work with, and who do you work with? She said, well, I work with the FBI and law enforcement agencies nationwide, part of a consortium. People work for free to help in missing person cases. And I've seen her work through some of these cases. Sometimes she's 100% successful. She sees the event, notifies the police, here's what happened, and then they go and find the perpetrator or the body or whatever. Sometimes she misinterprets that she says it herself. I'm getting in some kind of a vibe and I try to interpret it for whatever reason. But while I'm having my weekly sessions with her, we go have lunch, occasionally she'll say, somebody just showed up, somebody in my lifetime. Usually it's somebody I know. Sometimes it's somebody I don't know. Maybe it's somebody I met once. But they'll say, so-and-so's here. And instead of doing what most people would sanely do, like, really? Okay, tell me what, and you sit back and go, well, that doesn't sound right. Well, that sounds right. That's what most people do. I'm not like that. I go, what's he doing here? What does he want to know? Can I ask him some questions? Let's ask him some questions, why don't we? So just a couple days ago, I was talking to people. I brought a list of people. I filmed it, so I have it on film. I haven't posted it yet. I don't know what, when, or how, but I know how. I said, look, here are these people I'd like to, just ask some questions to. So somebody came through that I know, and the question was, so what do I look like to you? First I asked Jennifer, what does he look like to you? Well, I see like an image, you know, he's sort of standing. I said, okay, let's ask him, what do we look like to him? First person said, you look like bubbles, like holographic bubbles. So I can see what you're doing and experiencing. I'm over here in my realm, but you're over there. So I can interject, I can shout, I can turn the light off. Today, I put this address into Waze. Okay, I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's an app that drives you places. And it drove me right up to the Rook bar, where it said, you can wash your dog while you're having a beer. And now, because of this research, I can't help but go, oh, that's very funny. Did you guys, interrupt my Waze so that I would wind up at the Rook bar? I don't know. You just have to allow it's a possibility, because I've seen it enough. Lights going on, those kinds of things. But the question is, how do you guys do that? That's the question. So let's just say somebody that is close to you has passed away. We're all talking about the same kind of energetic construct here. Consciousness here, and Michael Newton, in his research, saw that about 1/3 of our energy comes here. 2/3 of our energy is always home. Now, he didn't characterize it as that. I do, because every interview I saw, he would say, how much of your energy is here? And they'd say, it's anywhere between 20 and 40%. So what's the other 2/3 of Rich Martini doing? Well, attending classes, playing cosmic tag. David Bennett and I discussed this. David Bennett wrote a book called Voyage of Purpose. He ran the IANDS group up in New York State and now has moved to Virginia Beach. Very eloquent speaker on the topic. But in his case, when he was a science officer aboard a ship, he had a near-death experience, he drowned for 20 minutes. And while he was floating around, he was drawn to this bright light, and in the bright light, some shards of light came off and brought him to what people sometimes call a life review. But the people that he saw, he said, in the group of people that I saw, which I referred to as a soul group, and so did Michael Newton, but he didn't, he said one of the guys was somebody that's alive, a friend of mine that I know was alive at the time. And he appeared to me in a translucent way, not quite all there. The other individuals were like the way we are, sort of solid, okay? And for you other people visiting, translucent, let's just call it that. So his friend was translucent. After his experience, he went home, he told his wife, I had a near-death experience, she slapped him. And then he learned, I'm not talking about that again. And for 20 years, he, just the way Beverly didn't tell anybody, for a long, long time. And then he attended a session somewhere in Sedona, and somebody said, let's do a guided hypnosis or a guided meditation, and it all came back to him, all the details. And then he went to see a Michael Newton-trained hypnotherapist, Newton Institute, up in upstate New York. She was practicing. She approached him. He didn't have an idea to do this as research, but this woman that he knew, she said, well, I'm learning how to be a hypnotherapist. Would you mind if we did a session? And he relived the experience once again. But the guy that he had seen earlier, who was translucent, had died in the interim. So when he saw him this time, he was back to being full. You see? Now that's a consistent report. And the thing about science, back to science for a second, science asks pretty much, this is arguable, but pretty much two things. That your results are consistent, no matter who does them, and replicable. Meaning I could take anybody in this room, sit them down, ask them a series of questions, have them go through hypnosis. Might not take one day, it might be a couple days, but eventually they're going to get to the same place. Okay? That's what science asks. And my point is, these reports are consistent. Michael Newton had 7,000 clients over 30 years before he published. They all said the same things about the afterlife. Then I've dug up Dr. Helen Wambach, Dr. Helen Wambach published 10 years prior to Newton. She had done the same thing she's a psychologist from New Jersey, and she had done hypnosis cases and asked them questions under hypnosis, and they all said the same things that Michael Newton's people did. We choose our lifetimes. We choose our parents. We may not like the choice. We may feel like we were pushed into the choice. We may feel like our relatives and loved ones forced us to do it. And then we get here and we're like, I don't like it here. This is consistent in the reports. There's other people who say, yeah, of course I signed up to be a woman this lifetime. I hadn't done it before, and I just really felt it was important for me to experience that. Yes, I decided to sign up to learn about addiction. And yes, I did check out after an overdose. And yes, I did learn about addiction. There's no judgment involved in your choice. It's your journey. And when you go back and you say, you know, I really thought I was going to be better this time around. Now your guides may say to you, you know, listen, you've been doing this, you keep saying you're going to pull it off, and you screw it up every time. And you know what? This time around, we're not going to offer you anybody, and we're going to suggest that you go into isolation for maybe a little bit of time. And people report being completely isolated, where they just meditate on all the people they've hurt. So if you want to call that hell, or you want to call that punishment, okay, it's the same term, but it's self-imposed. No one said, we're going to punish you. I know how disconcerting that sounds to the planet, because that's not what we've been taught. But I want to just say that I focus on the research. What do people say consistently over and over again? So they do say consistently, come on in. They do say, that's what they say. They say, come on in. That's consistent. No, what they say consistently is that we can go home. Okay, I've filmed 35 people under deep hypnosis so far. And I've done 5 sessions myself. And at the end of my first session, where I saw myself in a tragic circumstance, where I was doing myself in, the hypnotherapist said, oh, I'm so sorry. This must be really sad for you, or must feel bad. And I said, I'm a shell of what I once was. People took away my religion, they took away my family, they took away everything that made me human. And now I just want to go home. And when I said it, there I heard it again, that home word. Home. The heck does that mean? And then I went home. And I saw all my loved ones. And I saw my friend in her classroom. Now, I want to talk a little bit about time on the flip side. Okay? This is something that people always talk to me about. You've heard it before where people talk that they say time is simultaneous. Everything happens at once. There is no time in the afterlife. I've heard it, I've seen it, it's not in my research. What people say is it feels relatively like everything's happening simultaneously over there because it's so fast. But we do have younger souls and we do have older souls. We are younger souls and we become older souls. So there's a linearity to that experience. Further, if you want to examine what time is, I started with a friend of mine who did a session, and when she went back home, as she called it, she said, God, that felt like 10 minutes. I said, what do you mean? She said, 25 years here on the planet felt like 10 minutes over there. She was in the middle of a classroom where she was teaching, by the way, and she came back to her class, who had been waiting, like she went out for a cigarette. She lived that lifetime in 1610, where she was a captain of a ship, and I found his address and found his name and found all those details that she had given me. Because that's kind of that I am. But she said, 25 years here felt like 10 minutes. So since then, I've asked this question consistently to people. So tell me about time over there. I interviewed you 2 months ago, you person who's no longer on the planet. What does it feel like now seeing me again? And I'm asking you more questions. This person said, like a millisecond, like a continuous conversation. Okay, if 25 years is 10 minutes, so then does that mean 250 years is like 100 minutes? Yes. So then 2,500 years is like a week and a half. Is that correct? Is that what it feels like to you? Yes. Oh. So when you hear somebody saying in their near-death experience, they ran into so-and-so, who happens to be a famous person, or somebody under deep hypnosis says, oh, I felt like I was here back 1,000 years ago, it's not so hard to get your mind around if that's a week and a half ago for them. Further, when you start to talk about people choosing difficult lives, I want to examine that for a second. I had this discussion with a Tibetan monk who believes in the karmic idea of reincarnation, meaning you have a lower life or a lesser life if you've been naughty, in a nutshell. And if you've been good, you get a higher life. Okay, what does that mean? How do you define higher? So he said to me, well, why would I choose to be born in Africa, HIV positive, in a poverty-stricken country? And I said, which one of those concepts is a pejorative? Because if you're experiencing any one of those, you may not feel miserable or unhappy. In fact, the research is consistent that people who choose difficult lives do so because they feel they can handle it. They are older souls who feel they can handle the trauma of being here and learning and teaching lessons. Sometimes you come to teach a lesson in love to the person who is holding you while you die. Your lesson may be powerful for them. So, what I try to say is, now let me just imagine this for a second. I come to you and I say, would you mind, Jim, would you mind terribly, listen, here's the deal. You're going to live for 6 years and you're going to be covered in flies, okay? They're going to put you on TV because you're so sickly. And it's going to be stressful. No kidding around it. You're going to feel sick, you're going to be sick, it's going to be 6 sick years. But you're going to teach a lesson in love that no one else can teach. And I know you, and I trust you, and I think you can handle that. You think you can?
I'm in.
Jim's in. And when you examine it from that angle, when 6 minutes feels like what? I mean, if 25 years is 10 minutes, come on, what are we talking about? For over there, it's a minute. A lot of flies, a lot of sickness. Now, I've had 5 sessions, I've examined multiple lifetimes, what feels like multiple lifetimes, and I've verified them, as best as I can, detail-wise. Most of my lifetimes have been really stress-free. Can I tell you? I mean, I started to be embarrassed because I would, see myself as a Brahmin priest in Kerala, India, who, people would bring gifts to all the time. I saw myself as a Native American medicine man. I mean, I lost my wife and child in that lifetime, and I experienced that. I felt that. That was really difficult for me to have that emotion and then consciously say, if you're creating this, why would you experience how tragic this is? But mostly, for the most part, it's been kind of, laissez-faire, enjoying the journey. And I started to think I was a coward. That every time somebody would say, so Rich, would you like to come down and experience this? No. Let Larry, he's the one who wants to do it. Well, Larry's good at that. Just, Larry, go on, buddy. I'll catch up with Flipside. You guys go have fun. But after I said that, after I started thinking that, I did a session where I saw some little bit more difficult lifetimes. Experienced it. Oh, I see. Oh, you were a coward, or you were a cad, or you were a creepy soldier, killing people. It was that, and it's almost, this happens often, it's almost like my guides only wanted me to see one aspect, because that would allow me to do what I'm doing now, to talk about it. To get out and say, this is pretty cool, this information. Okay, Rich, we'll show you when you were a jerk as well, okay? And I feel like they're still hiding a few more lifetimes that I shouldn't know about. Because that thing of the canvas, of who we are as a canvas. And this is something I had a conversation while I was under hypnosis, talking to my spirit guide, and asking him to show me the moment where we came together. This is Scott DeTamble asking the questions. He's on his list of questions. It was just something he just threw at me, kind of apropos of nothing. Can you describe the moment Rich came under your care? Okay? Are you familiar with this concept? So everyone has a spirit guide who watches over you for all of your lifetimes, male or female. You see them in your dreams sometimes. You see them in your near-death experience sometimes. But they're there to keep an eye on you and help you all the time. They're accessible to you at all times. That's what they say. He just doesn't listen. I try to tell him. So Scott said, what's the process? And my spirit guide, through me, talking through me, says, well, I had all my lifetimes. I had my journeys. And when I was done with them, I graduated. I graduated from the college of life, of being here, this terrestrial life. Not only here, but other places. He said, and my graduation gift was Richard. I saw myself as a little baby with a bow, and for getting an F, you get rich. But I saw that, and imagine signing up to agree to watch over someone for all their lifetimes. How annoying, I would think. Come on. Recently, I was working with Jennifer, talking to a film director who I know passed away. I won't say their name because, it becomes a thing of celebrity, but it's somebody, that I know was famous in his lifetime. So we're having this conversation because I had met him years ago, and I said, is there anything you want to tell your fans? And, he was like, no. But all right, so tell me something about your journey and your path over there. And he said, nobody comes over here wishing that they held back more during their lifetime. Now just think about that for a second. That's not something I would even dare to say. What does it mean? Jennifer wouldn't have said it. It's not in her consciousness. And 9 times out of 10, after the session's over, after I film her, she goes, what did I say? So it is an unusual thing. Nobody over there wishes they held back more while they were alive. So how do we take that as an action phrase for all of us? Is there something that you're not doing because you're afraid it's going to hurt somebody else? Is there something you're not doing because you're afraid that people will laugh at you or mock you? Is there something you're not doing because you feel like society will ignore you? I will offer that you're here for a reason, here in this room for a reason. And it's not just because of my pretty face. And let's just say I know that for a fact. But it's because somebody in your life, and it could be somebody you physically know, but it can also be somebody you haven't met or you aren't familiar with, who is saying, go to the meeting today. He's going to say something that connects you to us. Okay? So I'm going to do that now. Let's do that, shall we? Does anybody want to connect to their guides? All right, very good. Beverly and I talked about this earlier. It's something that I've been doing as of late in a just experimental way, completely experimental. Like I say, I've filmed 35 deep hypnosis sessions. They're 4 to 6 hours. It's a sacred journey. Tears, laughter, apotheosis, epiphany happens every time. And I write about them in my books, and I transcribe them, I put them in there, and I put some of the scenes in my film. So those things are consistent, and that happens. But since then, just as an experiment, I started with friends of mine, just asking them a series of questions. And I found that fully conscious people can access this information, okay? So, never done this before. We're doing it here together for the first time, all right? So I'm gonna, and you don't have to, you can ignore everything I'm saying. And I'm not a hypnotist, and I'm not gonna put you under. All right, let's just get that out of the way. I'm a goofy guy from Santa Monica who's down here talking to you live. Okay? Let's accept that reality. Some of you are my friends, some of you I haven't met, but we're all here for a reason. I'm going to allow that. That your guides, who keep an eye on you at all times, have sent you here for a reason. They want to tell you something. I don't know what that is. Okay? What I do is I try to ask people to think of an event that happened in their lifetime that seems otherworldly. Could be a dream, could be you met somebody that felt like you've known them forever, could be somebody showing up in your house in a dream, or it feels like a dream, or they're a vision, or it's a ghost. Could be any time in your life. Could have been 5 years old, could have been 6 years old, it doesn't matter. Try to go to that memory. Just allow it to exist the way I'm telling you to allow it to exist. Like, just let it be present, okay? Now I want you to freeze the frame. Has everybody got one? Okay? So far, so good? Freeze the concept in your mind, like a photograph. Okay? Now you see the photograph, you see what, is it a person or is it a feeling? And if it's a feeling, then I want you to sort of in your mind's eye look beyond the photograph or look around you. Is there anybody associated with this feeling that's near you? And is that a man or a woman? Okay? I want you to sort of see that person. Is that a man or a woman? Or if it's a photograph of a person, it could be your aunt, it could be your mom, it could be your dad, it could be somebody who passed away, it could be a friend, it doesn't matter. I want them to be present. First, I want to thank them for appearing on your behalf in this very unusual way. Second, I want to say, we're not going to say anything or do anything that's weird or unusual or stressful. We're just talking about, I want to have them experience something today that if they don't experience it here in the room, they will experience it soon, somewhere in their sleep, in their journey. Okay? So I want you to freeze that frame. Look carefully. How old is this person? Are they young? Are they old? If it's a relative who passed away, are they the same age as when they passed, or are they younger or are they older? Just allow that to come into your consciousness. And now, I'm going to ask them a question. I'm going to say, would you do me a huge favor? I appreciate you're here with your loved one. Would you bring their guide forward? Just pull the guide into the room. And I want you to allow whoever that is to appear. Ask yourself, what am I seeing or what am I sensing? Is it a light? Is it a form? If it's either, ask yourself, is it a male presence or a female presence? Or neither? Or both? Those are our 4 options. You're asking them to come forward and be present with you because I'm going to ask them to do something for you. Okay? And I want you in your mind's eye, and then make this up. If it seems disconcerting in any way, just make it up. Allow this person to be standing in front of you. I want you to take their hands in your hands. Get a hold of them. Because this helps this connection. It helps it. So get their hands in your hands. It could be a relative that passed away. They may not seem to be there. Just allow them to be there. Allow this memory of them to be there in front of you. And hold their hands. This person who's been guiding you through your lifetime could be somebody you know. Could be somebody you've never seen before. Doesn't matter. Take their hands in yours and send them a feeling of love. When I say send them, just open your heart. Send them a ray of blast of light, of laser light into them that's unconditional love. And feel what that feels like when it bounces back through their hands. See if you can feel anything in your body that's related to this experience. If it's warmth, I want you to generate the warmth stronger. Make it a stronger feeling, a stronger emotion. If it's cold, turn it into warmth. Whatever this sensation is, I want you actively do a positive sending of them of healing light, healing energy. And now I'm going to ask your guide to do something. It's a place I'm familiar with, and it's a place where all guides are familiar with. It's a place that you're familiar with, maybe not consciously, but your higher self is quite familiar with it. I want your guide to take you to the place that you return to when you come back here, where you regenerate your spirit. Your guide knows what I'm talking about. This is a place that you go where you reconnect with who you are. And I want you to picture where it is. Is it inside or is it outside? Allow that to be the place. If it's outside, look around. Is there a place to sit down? Or is there water? Are there trees? Are there bushes? Are there gardens? Whatever it is that's in your view, try to define it so that you can examine it later. Like, how far in the distance can you see? Can you see anything around you? If it's inside, try to examine what it looks like inside. Is there a chair to sit in? Or how does this process work? Is it an energy feeling? And once I say to your guide, show them that feeling of what it's like to regenerate. Allow whatever that sensation is to be part of your body right now. It should be positive, because this is you reconnecting with your higher self. This is a place of healing. Now I'm going to ask your guide to do something which is unique to you. I want your guide to put a sensation somewhere in your body. I'm asking your guide to put somewhere in your body a sensation, a feeling. Could be a warmth, could be an electrical jolt, could be a tap, could be a feel on your shoulder, could be the back of your neck. Allow that to be a sensation that you're experiencing now, somewhere in your body. Even if it's contrary to what you're thinking about, just some part of your body now feels a sensation. That sensation is your connection to your guide. So whenever you feel that, if you're driving around in a car, your guide's trying to tell you something. It might be, look out, here comes a truck. Whatever it is, allow that that's the way you guys can communicate in the future. Because I'm here, and I'm giving you this kind of really unusual chance to connect with your guide in some physical way. You with me? So far, so good? All right. So now, here we are with your guide. We're in this place of regeneration and healing. Again, take hold of your guide's hands and hear what they have to say to you. What is it they want to impart to you? I'm going to ask them. How is this person doing? Are they on the right path? Is this the journey they signed up for? Is there anything that they can do to help enhance this journey or change it? Or is this just the thing that they're signing up for? Are you happy with that? All right, so these are the kinds of questions you're asking your guide. And now, if you can just do us a favor, download some information that's new to our friends here. Whatever that means to you. Might be something to do with their family, might be something to do with a key hidden in the house, might be whatever it is, whatever the new information is, just allow that to come forth to you. And see that, allow that somewhere, not today, maybe not tomorrow, but maybe a week from now, you're going to remember that I asked for this. You're going to experience that thing, and that will be a way for them to prove to you that what I'm doing now is not artificial, but it's part of your journey on the planet. All right? So take in this world around you, take in this place around you, whether you're inside or outside. Just allow this to be like a healing place, like the room we're in. The room we're in right now, here in La Mesa, is a place of healing. It's a place of non-judgment. It's a place that we can always access at any time. Now I must tell you, when I've done this before, some people go away from this experience feeling a little loopy, feeling like they prefer being back there than here. So it's important for your guides to give you a sense of groundedness as we return back And if we did a session together, or you did a hypnotherapy session, you would get a chance to meet with your counsel, whoever those people are. You get a chance to meet with your soul group, whoever those people are. Your library, your librarian, whoever those people are. But before we come back, I want you to thank your guide for taking you on this journey. You can ask your guide's name. If a name pops into your head, just allow that to be your guide's name for now. It's a placeholder. Again, this could be your subconscious talking, but for whatever reason, your subconscious drove you over here today so that we can talk about this stuff and be connected to our guides. All right? Okay. So let's all come back from this place where we're not under hypnosis, we're just having a conversation. Right? We're back in the world, grounded, and perhaps in touch with people on the flip side that need to help us. All right, so I've never done that before, like I say, and you can see how vague it is, and you can see how directed it is. But I'm certainly curious to hear if any of you had an experience of any kind. I mean, I've seen people do hypnosis, group hypnosis where they put you under hypnosis, right? It's kind of similar. But in this case, I'm encouraging you not to be under hypnosis, right? And then if you have any questions about the work or the material, go ahead. Anybody? Oh, first let's have a big hand for Rich Martini. Go ahead.
So, are there gradations of the other side, the fourth dimension, or whatever? You said that there's a lineal track from old souls and new souls. What about a vertical, maybe a pyramidal shaped track, with the capstone being what we consider God? So, are there variables, levels, balances of dimensionality substantiated by vibration or whatever the constructs are?
Well, the answer is I would point to the research. So I have met people who've had an experience of something along those lines of different realms. Michael Newton said that in his work he had visited 27 different realms. You'll hear in New Age work people say, oh, well, there's 7 realms, or people talk about that. I've had people talk about it in the shape of a tree, that the tree itself is God, but as you go up through the branches, you start to see these different realms in different areas. Recently, I came upon a metaphor that I kind of like and I used, and that is, think of the capstone, or God, as ocean, as the word ocean. The ocean being the water on the planet. And when we're here, we're encapsulated in a glass. And some of us exist in pools together. Some of us are just in glasses together. But inside the glass is the water that is composed of everything that's on the planet, all those other souls, all those other O2 objects. When we die, we go up from the glass of water. What do they call it? Condensation, and you go up and then you float around and then you go back to the ocean. And the ocean itself, because it's consistent with these reports, we're all connected back home. We're all sentient. The ocean itself is sentient. So if you think of the ocean as God, just for lack of a better term, and again, I've been told this specifically, it's beyond my capacity, Rich, to explain, but for me it's a pretty good metaphor, because then I don't think of God so much as a capstone or the creator in terms of a person, but when I think of the ocean as a creator of water, yeah, okay, I understand that. That's where water comes from. The ocean, it floats in a cloud, it comes down. I'll tell you one interesting story. My son, who, when we talk about reincarnation, it's a little bit of a sidebar. My son, when he was 2, said on the phone to me, we were talking, I was in Chicago, and he said, Dad, I was a monk in Nepal. And I said, put your mother on the phone. Why did you say that? Why did he say that? Were you watching a show about Nepal? No. Were you looking at a book on brain? No. Okay. About a year later, driving around Santa Monica with him, I'm looking in the rearview mirror, and I say, 3-year-old, he's in a car seat. I go, So did you know Dad from before? He said, yeah. I said, where'd you meet him? I mean, where'd you meet me? He said, Tibet. Where in Tibet? On the path. I'm thinking, does he mean philosophical path? Like, what? He's 3. But wait a second, I've been to Tibet. And then it occurred to me, when I was in Western Tibet with Robert Thurman, circling Mount Kailash, this sacred trip around Kailash and filming it for Tibet House, he had said to me, if you make a wish in the spot, it'll come true. And I literally went, okay, I'm going to get $1 million. No, I want a 3-picture movie deal. $1 million, 3 million. Oh, you know what? I'll just, whatever comes out of my mouth, that's my wish. I want a son. And as I said it was like, where did those words come from? I had no consciousness of that thought. We had a daughter. We weren't planning. But then I thought, oh, maybe it's a DNA thing, you know, males. I'm in Tibet. I'm up at a high altitude. Maybe that's where that comes from. But now I'm back in the car with him in Santa Monica. And I say, do you mean Mount Kailash? And he went, no. I said, okay, I was on a lot of paths in Tibet. Was it Kangra? He went, yes, Kangra. Kangra is the name of the path that goes around Mount Kailash, but it's in Tibetan. But I said it. He repeated it, but as if, yeah, that's it, Kangra. So a year later, I was working on the movie Salt, Angelina Jolie film. I drive her out of Korea. I worked on that movie for about a year. So if you haven't seen it, now you're going to look it up. Hey, there's Rich. So I had sublet an apartment in the Greenwich Village area, and my wife calls me on the phone on the set, says, did you show him this book? I go, what are you talking about? She said, he just went to the library of this guy's house and pulled 2 books out, threw one in the trash. And she said, what are you doing? He said, that book's nonsense. This is the important one. And he held up Robert Thurman's book, Circling the Sacred Mountain. He opened it up to the place where I made the wish, a photograph, and said, that's where I found Daddy. This is prior to him being able to read. So she wanted to know, did I point to the book and tell him? No, I'd never said the word Kailash except that time in the car. So now he's 5. We're in Topanga Canyon. There's a Bhutan shop where they have Tibetan things. And so I was talking to the owner. And my wife came up and said, he's disappeared. And I went, what do you mean? It's a small place. Where did he disappear? Couldn't find him. She comes back 10 minutes later with that look of shock on her face, and she said, I found him in the back room, and he was standing in front of a mirror and doing full prostrations. All the way down to the ground. You know, you've seen monks do it. He had never seen a monk do it, but he was doing it in front of a mirror. She said, I watched him for 5 minutes, over and over and over and over, and finally he saw her in the mirror, and he said, Mom, you need to meditate more, and this is how you do it. He pulled her down to the ground, and he said, you hear the bells and the music? Tibetan music. He said, when you hear a bell, peace comes into the world. What? So I went to a Tibetan friend, and I said, what does it mean? You know, I know horns mean they're announcing wisdom. What do bells mean? He said, it means peace comes into the world. Literally the words my son had used. Now when he was 6, and I'm going to tie this all together. When he was 6, I sat him down to say, Grandma's going to pass away. I just gotten a call from the home, and our home, where she was. She's not going to make it this weekend. So I sat my kids down, and I'm remembering when I first saw a dead person. Now I see him all the time. No, when I first saw a dead person, it was, my grandfather in a box with, too much makeup on. So I sat him down and I said, now look, the next time you see Grandma, it's not going to be Grandma. And he said, oh, Dad. Spirit is like water. Watch. Picked up a bottle, Arrowhead bottle, half empty, threw it on the ground. And they stopped on it, looked at me like, and then he started jumping up and down. And my wife and I were like, what is he doing? He's smashing this bottle until it's crushed and completely destroyed. He picks it up and shows it to me, and he says, you see, the water's okay. Cap was on. The water's okay. Our bodies crumple, they get old. The water is always okay. Easily the most profound teaching I've ever heard from anyone. on the planet, and this was a 6-year-old. By the way, once they reach about 8, you find kids who remember lifetimes they don't remember anymore. I talked to a doctor about it, and I think it's because the skull hardens about 7 to 8 years old. So it's almost like the reception is, you're not getting the reception anymore, because the skull's keeping out the signals. I don't know. Maybe the filters go into a place. I don't know. But all I can tell you is now, if I mention the flip side, he runs around going, la 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 la, you're a monk. No, I wasn't. You dreamt that. And I mentioned it in the preface to Flipside, when he was about 3, I gotta say 3, we were sitting on the couch watching some TV show, and on came a Victoria's Secret ad. And it was a beautiful girl in a bikini with wings. And she was like dancing provocatively to the camera. And the camera just like pushed in on her. And he jumped off the couch, pointed at the TV and said, I want that! And I was thinking, does he want the bathing suit or the girl, like the wings? I don't understand. What is he talking about? And I said, wait a second. I thought you said you were a monk in Nepal. He said, not anymore. So, long way of saying yes, everybody has a different experience of what the matrix experience is. Everybody has a different experience of it. So it may be that you experience it as a pyramid, as a capstone. I've had people tell me that they had a conversation with God. Even Alexander had a conversation with God during his journey. But I like to sit down and say, so what did God look like? You know, what's your, and they say, well, it felt, all-knowing, all-loving. And I try to then define it. What is that? Is it a physical presence, more male, more female, whatever. And you get the syntax answers. So is God a particular individual? I don't know. But I do know that the one definition that really worked for me was, if you open your heart to everyone and to all things, that's how you experience what God is. You see? That makes sense. Long way for an answer to that question, wasn't it? Anybody else? Anybody have an experience while I was talking, or was that just a waste of time? Anybody?
I just went back and relived,
Your experience. Okay, that's important.
And,
Did you see any new information while you were doing that?
It wasn't new information that I heard my guides tell me. It was a reaffirming confirmation.
What did your guide say?
Get the hell out of here, it's all bullshit. No.
Yes! I know him! Was he wearing like an orange robe? No.
No, actually, he had no clothes on at all.
No, what?
He was on the Chippendale.
No, I did have one woman say, oh my God, my guide looks like Friar Tuck. He's wearing a brown robe. And so Scott said, well, let's ask your guy, why does he look like Friar Tuck? And then she started laughing hysterically. And he said, what did he say? And she said, he said, because my clown outfit's at the cleaners. So guides frequently, often, say goofy things to us that, what? In my case, I had the experience of standing in front of my counsel and telling a story. And at the end of the story, well, here's the question, and this relates to everybody. The question was, why did I choose me? And I had no idea I was going to get anywhere, but I wrote it down on my list of questions. So why did I choose Rich Martini? It's what we all want to know. Beverly, we talked about this earlier. Why did I choose me? Why did I choose this life? And the answer came to me, and I said it aloud, which is, everything has energy to it. Every action, every word, every musical note, every book you write, every film you make, carries a certain amount of your energy, your, let's say, call it heart energy, intent, and it goes out into the world and it can heal people. And you chose the life of a filmmaker because you thought that you could make people laugh in film. Most of my films have been comedies, because a guffaw will heal people. People laughing in a theater can change their disposition immediately. I said, tears work the same, however they require catharsis. I've never used catharsis in a sentence before, but it seemed like I knew what I was talking about. But you chose to be a filmmaker because you thought the combination of words and music, you could heal people the way you've healed people in other lifetimes. And then I said, I just wish I had chosen somebody more successful at it. And the council all laughed. And so did the hypnotherapist. So I was getting laughs on 2 planes simultaneously. Very unusual experience. But we all choose our lifetimes because, and it's hard for us to comprehend. It seems like we're choosing, because we think of things in terms of accomplishments. There was one guy who, in his session with Michael Newton, said, I'm in front of my council, and they're saying, so how do you think you did? And he said, I donated like half of my income, and I took care of people. And they were like, no. Who did you help? Well, I gave my money away, and I did this thing, and I was very open with, no, you don't remember, do you? And then they showed him in the 1930s on a bus with a woman who burst into tears, and she was sobbing in the corner, and he went and sat with her and put his arm around her, and he said, everything's going to be okay. And in that moment, he saw that he had affected her. It changed her life, and that went out like a wave, like a wave, like a wave. That, he was like, oh, this is weird, all the money I gave away, and that's what they wanted to show me? In David Bennett's near-death experience, they showed him a life review, and they showed him 2 things. One, he was in a bar in Texas, and some guy hit on him. Cowboy bar. Came over, you're cute. And he went, ew! And he made a noise and said to everybody, this guy, he's hitting on me, or whatever he said. I'm sorry, David. But the bar jumped on the guy, and they beat the heck out of the guy. And he experienced that humiliation from that guy's point of view. He saw what it felt like to be beaten up and hated and kicked out of a bar. And he felt awful. I did that. But they showed him, conversely, he used to work as a butcher at one point in a grocery store, like in Texas, and he said there was this woman who came in and she was really sour, and everybody considered her the most sour customer in the entire place. And he said, I took it upon himself as just a joke to get her to laugh, to get her to smile. And so he'd go out of his way to do these incredible feasts for her. Just, she'd come in on Nia pot roast. Oh, he would really work on it. And finally, she came in one day beaming, and she said, that pot roast that you did for me was the hit, and I am now the hero of my family, and so I just wanted to thank you. And he said he felt that wave that went through all of her family and everybody else that she knew, and how it was this profound feeling of healing and helping. When I was working on the movie Salt, I was away from my family, 20-hour days, 7 days a week. And at some point, I had a great time. I spent every day taking notes from Angelina, passing them to the director. And so, I was treated pretty high up there. But I felt like this is grueling. And what am I doing here? This has nothing to do with my career and who I am and why am I here? And I had a dream that night about a orphanage in Cambodia. And I was sitting at a table, and I'm looking around, all these kids are eating soup with spoons. I'm like, what the heck is this? Oh, I see. Angelina owns an orphanage in Cambodia, or supports it, and so all my overtime is helping her to make money so that she can donate to the orphanage? That's a bit of a stretch. Thank you, but okay. I don't think my, running around the set and make people laugh is helping her at the orphanage. So the next night, I had another dream. It was my guide's planking me in the head with a fork. The next night, my dream was, I was in Mumbai, and I was in an alley. And I've been to India many times, and I was in an alley, and I saw this guy, a young man with a family, selling an illegal copy of Salt, the movie. The movie wasn't even over. We were in the middle of making it, but there was a picture of her, with the word salt on it, and with cheap plastic wrapper. And he was selling it for 40 rupees to some businessman. And I know that 40 rupees is $10. And he took the 40 rupees, and he turned around and handed it to his wife. who was living in a box with their kids. In that moment, I understood the wheel of creativity. That's why it was an illegal copy. It had nothing to do with money. It had to do with intent, energy. You put it into the product. You don't know who it's going to help. You do your best. Somewhere, somebody on the other side of the planet has been healed and helped by your effort. When you go back to work on Monday or Tuesday or whatever it is you're doing, even if you're thinking, this is a waste of time, allow yourself to go, well, then why did I choose this lifetime to do this work? Is it possible that I'm helping, healing somebody somewhere I can't see, don't know, will never know? That's a profound rethinking or shift in consciousness anyway. Anybody else? Go ahead.
This idea of the guide guiding your decisions in life is somewhat novel or new, and so I had a feeling of almost like not distrust, but questioning. Well, why would my guide lead me in that direction, and am I really comfortable
With that concept,
Yeah,
absolutely. And I want to reiterate, and your question is, would my guide lead me down a path that seems kind of annoying, the idea that a guide is in charge of your evolvement. My experience was that we were partners. That my guide and I didn't add this part. When he said, Rich was my graduation gift, my guide, he said, Rich and I sat down and we looked at what you can, as a metaphor, is a giant canvas. And we worked out what it was that he wanted to accomplish. And you put a paint in each lifetime, different colors. You might experience generosity, you might experience courage, you might experience forgiveness. Whatever those things are, that color becomes part of your journey. And now you come back and you go, I'm looking at your canvas, and you go, well, I seem to be missing a little red over here. I think that might be nice. And so that might be something that you sign up to accomplish and put up on your canvas. And when you get to the end of your journey, according to Newton's research, you can go on and do something else. You might be on someone's council, you might graduate, you might be somebody's guide, you might be helping some other way. But you're looking at this giant canvas that you've created. Those are your choices. Your guides are literally like tour guides. Do you want to go, now here's what we have planned for you. We're going to get on this boat and we're going to go to Hawaii. And you can say, I've been to Hawaii. Your guides will say, well, we think it's a great idea for you to go to Hawaii. And you can say no. That's key. So there's no one telling you what you have to do. But they're saying to you, in this kind of overall theme that you're talking about, here's the opportunities for you. And they may show you 8 different lifetimes. This is an interesting concept. They show you, I've had people tell this to me, seeing like, oh, here's a lifetime in Paris, I could be. Here's a lifetime in Tibet. Oh, it's too cold. And you make the choice. Now I ask, the question is, does that lifetime exist? Quantum theory has this idea that if you chose this path, I didn't come today, everybody's life would be different, right? That's a theory in quantum mechanics. What I'm hearing from people on the other side when I ask that question is, they give people the visual the way a CGI would give you an example of what a movie scene would be. They can create the city and people walking around and all that stuff just so you can experience it, so you can have it. It doesn't exist unto itself. So when you decide not to take that lifetime in Paris and whatever time period, somebody else will have a lifetime. It's not that particular person because it was just created for your understanding. I know that sounds out there.
Well, are they all on the same page?
Yeah, no, and that's the question. And the answer is no. Because it's up to you. It's up to you. And so if I sat with you and your guide, And I asked, would you show him some of his other lifetimes? And maybe some lifetimes where you guys have been together? Or somebody that you love and you know, who feel like you've known them forever? I might ask, so can you show him a lifetime that you two folks have had in the past? And they sometimes will show you very dramatically, like details, oh, here we are in 1492, and you're a woman and you're a man and you're living in this life and you're having this adventure together. You're experiencing it. I'm not, because I'm just asking a question, right? But you're experiencing it. Oh, I see. We were brothers and sisters back then. And this life, he's my father and I'm his son. It's just different. So, is anybody in charge? You're in charge.
Can your guide be somebody who's actually alive at the same time you are?
Generally, it's not in the research. I would assume that it could be, because the question has been asked before. Have you ever had a lifetime with your guide? I did. I asked that question to my guide. Like I said, I've done 5 sessions. I got a lot of questions. And yes, the answer was, there was a lifetime where I was his grandfather because I helped him through a difficult time. So I was really only with him for about so many years. But here's the thing. If 1/3 of your energy is here,
Mm-hmm.
and 2/3 is back there,
Mm-hmm.
as one guide said to me, do the math. You could be doing a lot of stuff over there with that other 2/3. You could be living another lifetime. Sometimes people report that, like, you're living a lifetime here, and I'm also a housewife in Toronto. I mean, I've heard this.
Oh, wow.
I've seen that,
That's
and
weird.
it's weird. It's very weird. And
An alternate reality, isn't that what you would put into a parallel universe?
well, I don't know if I'd call it that, because once we remember what the guide said, you humans always feel the need to name things as if that's going to put it in the box for you. But my
Of course.
feeling is, I'm agreeing with him, which is to say, there are people, now Newton asked these people who claim that they have more than one lifetime, but how did this happen? Well, I'm an old soul, I've been around a lot, and I'm sort of coasting with only 20% of my energy in this lifetime because all I do is sit around and read books. And there's another 22% that's over in China, doing this lifetime. I also had the experience of interviewing somebody who's no longer on the planet who said, quote, I'm helping to guide a life in Japan right now. And I said, well, what does that mean? Are you saying you incarnated with somebody or you're guiding? And she said, well, it's kind of the same thing. She said, think of it as a marionette. Okay? Your higher self is holding the strings. Your temporary self is on stage and playing the role with your sword and whatever you're supposed to be doing, and your reality is like, I'm gonna get you. And up here you're saying, no, you're down there to learn this lesson. Put the sword down. Or whatever that journey is. So you're guiding this entity that's here, that's incarnated in human form, and not some other form. Especially when you talk to people who claim that they normally incarnate on other planets. That's unusual. Just a factoid. Newton, in his report, said 10% of his clients, 7,000 over 30 years, came to him and said, normally I feel like I incarnate somewhere else. I came here to understand or to help. I feel like and he called them hybrids, because they're normally somewhere else. It's kind of a pejorative, really. Now that number's up to 30%. According to Pete Smith, the president of the Newton Institute, told me in one of my books, he says, the number has risen to 30%. So why has it risen to 30%? Is it because 20% more people are coming here from somewhere else? Or there are 20% more crazy people running around the world? Possibly. Or are they just attracted to the research because they've been confused by it? In Flipside, I interviewed a guy who I talked to him, we had lunch together. I wanted to see, like, are you an alien? But in his session, he remembered very clearly where he normally incarnated, and very clearly said he was here to help usher in, not an age of consciousness, because that's a terminology in a box, but that idea of altering and shifting consciousness, because right now he's a gardener, and it's not like he's out there doing it, but while he's sleeping, the other 2/3, all bets are off. That make sense? Go ahead.
We could go on forever.
Yes,
but I just
let's
wanna-
go on forever.
I
we,
just wanna-
we do.
We do.
I just
We don't
wanna-
die.
I just want to give a shout out for the time. We have like another 40 minutes to go.
Okay.
And
I wasn't sure how long to go.
I know you want to sign some books.
Yeah, that's true.
And
All right, let me just get a couple of more questions in.
okay.
All right? Go ahead.
Well, something I've wondered about is people that are from other cultures,
Mhm.
They're totally different from what we experience.
Mhm. Like?
Oh, like the terrorist that was on one of the planes that hit.
Oh, go to the terrorist on the plane,
No,
why
but
don't you?
I'm
kidding.
serious. The person
No, I
has
understand.
been raised a certain way,
Yes,
has really strict beliefs, right?
absolutely.
And he's convinced when he gets to the other side, there are gonna be 27 virgins or whatever the hell that is. But he, so he gets over there. So
Mhm.
I wanna know, is he put in isolation or has he accomplished a goal? You know what I'm trying to say?
I totally know what you're talking about.
Okay.
And the answer is yes, yes, no, and yes. No, I'm kidding. So I have a friend who grew up in Saudi Arabia. He's Muslim. He's, it's culture and everything else. That was his whole thing. We sat down and I explained to him, this is what people say under deep hypnosis. He said, "You're blowing my mind. Stop it." So the idea of that this is among all human beings is consistent. So it doesn't matter. I've had people under hypnosis who are from all walks of life and all religions, and they all say the same thing. So it doesn't matter what they are doing here in terms of the religious journey, right? The spiritual journey, okay? So when you get to the flip side, if you've been a crazy person, not doing what you signed up to do, you're going to be startled when you get to the other side. Some people report, I saw my father. That was the first person I saw when I died. It was my dad. That's how I knew I was dead. How could I be seeing my dad unless I'm dead? So people have a startling experience, but by and large, the journey is the same. People are in their soul group, they sign up for a lesson, they sign up for a journey, and everybody else participates in it. So now if you want to talk about what the negative or positive aspects of a journey, right, which is what you're saying, because the word terrorist, I spent a lot of time in India, I have friends in Pakistan, I have friends all over the world. I've heard their point of view, calling these drone attackers terrorists. I've heard that word, and I go, hey, hold on a second, let's just take the word off the table. If you look at Flipside or read the book, this woman who was in Auschwitz, and it's a good example, and hard to get your mind around, but she remembered dying in Auschwitz. And then when she went to her Between Lives realm, she was talking to her guides, and she said, live on camera, "Why did I choose such a difficult life? I lost everyone that I loved, my whole family, all killed. Why would I do that?" She said, they're showing me these images. This is going to be hard for me to say, but they're showing me these images that show it was harder to choose to play the role of a perpetrator than a victim in this life. My head shot up from the camera. Easily the most controversial thing I've ever heard, politically incorrect. It was harder to choose to play the role of a Nazi than a victim. But then she said, every day, from my experience, was an intense lesson in courage, in forgiveness, in love, like a hyper school. We don't normally experience those kind of intense emotions and intense lessons, but I signed up to experience that. I see now that it was harder for the people who signed up to be the people who hurt people because of all of that, how that would affect their souls and their journey. So then,
So
the
they would
next,
actually choose.
they would actually
Be an
choose.
Nazi.
And the next woman that I filmed was a woman who saw herself being murdered back in the 1800s, being shoved off a ship. She was a sailor, an Irish sailor, a man, pushed off a ship, and she went to the moment of drowning and was choking and saying, swearing, you know, they've killed me, they pushed me off the ship, and they're laughing. This is horrible. But as she then rose up to look back at that life, she said, oh, I see, I was a bad person. The ship had run aground, and I was stealing food from everybody, and they voted me off the ship. Then she said, the captain is coming towards me now. He's holding my hands and saying, you have no idea how hard it was to do that to you in this lifetime. Then she said, I see he's my father in this life. He saved me from drowning when I was 5. And an experience that happened to her, she didn't know who saved her, but she saw now. The captain who pushed her saved her. In the book Memories of the Afterlife by Michael Newton, there's a German woman who recounts a lifetime in Nazi Germany when she was a soldier. 1930s, she was married, about to marry a Jewish woman, and recounted that. But then his parents discovered that she was Jewish and was like, you can't get married. So then he goes forward into the war, and he's a soldier, and he's out killing everybody, and he's assigned to a border of Switzerland, and a truck pulls up, and everybody's pulled off the truck to be executed, and he sees his fiancée in that group of people. Hypnotherapist said, what did you do? He said, I did my job. I shot everyone. And then he gets killed a few days later. American comes running through and shoots him. And now he goes into the Between Lives realm. He, she, this is a woman remembering this lifetime as a man. He, she goes into the Between Lives realm, and as she returns to the soul group, sees this woman coming out of the mist with her hands out. Person says, I can't go any forward, I'm so embarrassed, I can't believe. And the woman, in her mind's eye, takes her hands and says, don't you remember? This is what we signed up for. This is what we agreed to. In Flipside, I talk about a sniper, an American sniper. He was called the Morrow World Man because there was an iconic picture taken of him. But while he was sniping in Iraq, every person he shot, he said in the article, he saw their life flash before his eyes. From a little baby growing up, putting on the caftan, learning how to fight, and it drove him crazy, and he had to quit, and then he was like homeless, and when the reporter tracked him down. We sign up for lifetimes that are difficult. This is the playing field. No question about it. It's not easy to be here. It takes courage to come here. It takes real courage to play a difficult role, however you want to place that. I'm not mitigating anybody's pain or saying that anybody does anything that's okay. But I am saying people sign up for things and we can't see why they signed up for it. We can only ask them. Why did you sign up to be born in this country, to suffer what you suffered, to put on this outfit to kill other people? Here's the premise. Nobody dies. You've got somebody in prison right now that you want to have executed? You can't kill him. He's going to go home. You're giving him a ticket home. Doesn't it make more sense to keep that person around and learn more lessons while they're here because they're having a hard time learning stuff? You're giving people the golden ticket to go back home. So when you start thinking of it from that way, then it's really hard for us to punish. It's hard for us to judge. I think it's important for us to understand it, and certainly there's people that need to be isolated from the rest of us, but maybe they're here to do something else. Maybe go to Finland or Denmark, where they take all the killers and put them in a happy prison and everybody seems okay. If you watch the HBO show Vice, or Michael Moore's movie, Who Do We Attack Next? Really, it's a profound. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you.
In my spiritual investigation, I grew by learning that as the soul in between lives you're asked, what do you want to work on next? Did you learn what you want to learn? What do you want to learn next? So let's just make this up, that you say, well, I want to work on patience and forgiveness. Then they show you 3 or 4 pregnant mothers in different cultures, in different religions, in different skin colors, and what your life will be like if you, which fetus you pick. And here's the key that I wanted to share, is they say all souls choose the most difficult of those choices to come down and do.
Cool.
So you may look at a privileged child in a very wealthy family that's adorable
As we
and
do.
talented and say, they chose the
Yeah,
hardest
that's
one.
right.
they
I'm
were
so
given
sorry
to
for
do."
you. I'm so
But,
sorry you chose that.
You know, maybe they're dealing with being the child of a famous person and they're ignored or whatever. That's the point. Is I was fascinated that of the cards you can choose, each soul chooses the hardest one. So I look at each person and go, they've chosen this time around the hardest option they were given.
You'll never
to
look
work
at
on their
homeless
homework.
people again the same.
I don't look at
Because you're
anybody
like,
the
oh my
same.
God, why would you choose that difficulty?
Yeah.
You know, and I can only say that in terms of choosing the most difficult role, just go to the theater. The
Yeah.
plays that you remember, you know, there's an old saying, the essence of drama is conflict. And the plays you remember are the ones where people went through the most stuff. But when you get off stage, Romeo doesn't say to Juliet, what'd you take the poison for? You're not supposed to take the... Yes, you are. Oh, that's right. Oh, shit. I forgot. This is like, we've done this like 500 times. Okay. You don't chastise the other actor. Iago doesn't yell at Othello like, you know, like, yes, of course I'm going to kill you. No, they come, they go, good job. You know, high five.
Yeah.
I thought you were a little over the top in that one area, though. Like, I wish you'd pull it back just like a hair. Anyway, go ahead.
Okay, I have a question. In your research, does it show that the guide takes a different look in each lifetime? It's like my guide told me that he
interesting.
doesn't look the same in every lifetime.
Love that.
Yeah.
So what
and-
does he
and
look
when-
like? Did he
Well, in
show
this
you?
lifetime, he's very clear to me, an Indian that has passed over that was really here, but then there's so many parallel lives going on at one time, it doesn't really matter. You know, he was here, but he was there, you know.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
but
Well,
he
it's
said
interesting
they
that
take
he
different-
showed that to you, and they, you know,
Yeah,
and like
yeah,
let you,
that they-
because he wanted you to see that.
Right, correct,
You know.
yes, and wanted me to be here today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Thanks. I appreciate that. I thank him,
Yeah.
dude.
Yeah.
And what are the lottery numbers again? No, just kidding.
And they don't give me the.
There is a funny joke on that. I was talking to my medium friend, and she was channeling somebody, and we were like really in this intense conversation with somebody who would really know. And I said, "So, what are the lottery numbers?" And she started saying 7, 15, 20, and I was like, "Really? Okay, all right. Remember they done?" And I was like, "Oh my God! Like, when am I supposed to play this?" So I went to the lottery thing, and I bought a ticket for $1, and I won $1. And when I won the $1, I heard a voice in my head say, "Not very specific, were you?" So look, guides can be pretty funny,
Oh, yes.
you know, and it's related to you. Guides can be pretty serious and kind. I had one guy say, "My guide is here," and he was really non-communicative about everything. He said his name is Thor. You can use the word Thor, and so we gave him a lot of information, but then he said, they're not letting me see, like the door. The door's open, I see a golden path, but they're not letting me see it. And Scott DeTamble said, so what'd you bring him here for? And in that moment, Thor, being challenged by a human, went, oh, okay, I'll show him a little bit. It was like, you know, this Columbo, you know, bickering with the perpetrator to get to the answer. You can do that with your guide. You can really say, like, what's up, dude? What's that about? Oh, yeah, you know it all. Okay, fine. Can you just give me a break on this one? There's no spanking machine. You know, there's nobody that's gonna, other than you, if you don't do the thing that you set out to do, if you shy away because of the fear, et cetera, et cetera. So that's why it's important to hear over and over again. Don't be shy. So, in my session, my first session, and I really got somewhere, and I was so shocked because I really was convinced I wasn't going to get anywhere. But now as I'm coming back, you know, I'm saying goodbye to the council, we're wrapping it up, and I said, in the hypnotherapy, I said, is there anything you, Jimmy Quast out of Maryland, said, is there anything you want to ask your council before we go? I said, yeah. Is there one sentence or concept that I can bring back to tell people that would be helpful for humanity? And they gave me a sentence. I heard it. I went, okay, I understand. Just let go. Let go of fear. Let go of judgment. Let go of anger. Let go of crisis. Let go of attachment, but not attachment to the people that you love, because that's part of the nature of unconditional love. You are attached to these people. So it's not the learning, and learning non-attachment is very important in quite a few philosophies, but you have to also learn what attachment is. You are connected to everyone, so honor that, but don't get caught up in the vanity of that experience, or the vanity of people demonstrating to you consistently over and over again that they think they're more important, or they think this thing is more important. As soon as you get one of these people, including me, I'm a finger wagger. Don't be wagging your finger at me, wag it at yourself. So, but thank your guide for coming here. All right, so one more, Tom.
Could you describe what's on the table for us?
So on the table is the keys to the universe. There's 5 keys up there. You don't have to get any of them. It's fine. You can. Everything I've said to you is the key. But up there is Flipside, the original book, and the film, the DVD. The book sells for $20 online, so all my books are $15, so it's $5 off to be here. The DVDs, I've got a set price, it's $20, it's just easier for me. And it's $5 off of Hacking the Afterlife. Hacking the Afterlife is a huge book, but it's got a lot of information. And also, if you are an Audible person, if you're into Audible, I've read all the books. And if you don't want to spend a nickel, it's fine. Don't worry about it. It's okay. And if you go online, I've got a lot of on YouTube. I put this up, in a couple days. So it'll be me talking again. But I do have weird people contact me. I mean, they're not weird, but they're people who contact me and say, I can't go to sleep unless I hear you listening to you drone on. And then I feel like you're still talking to me while I'm sleeping, and you're teaching me something. So I don't know what that means.
It means you come from La La Land.
Yeah, that's right. Santa Monica land. Well, I'm from Chicago, so. But, I know that my nuns would have said, it means you should shut up is what it means. No, but look, whatever it means to you, it can be free.
Did you know Michael Newton?
Yes.
Could you, because I've read all his books, just tell me a little bit, what was he like?
Well, Michael's a very precise fella, and so, here I interview him for 3 hours, and I ask him all the questions, and he gives me this great story. And then I interviewed his wife, and it's such an unusual story. In Michael's case, he told me he had saw a photograph of a woman that looked like a nurse. He kept running into the photograph of a woman in a nurse outfit, and the word Peggy would appear. And he had served in the Korean War. And ultimately, he was in Houston. He just mustered out of the Army, wherever he was. And he opened up a magazine, and there was a nurse, a white outfit, wearing a watch, and underneath it said Peggy. And he said to the taxi driver, take me to the nearest hospital. And he drove to the nearest hospital in Houston, and instead of going to the front door, he took him to the back door where the dormitory was, and he walked into the dormitory and said, do you have a nurse here named Peggy? And they were like, excuse me? You don't want to be on the nut ward? It's just like around the corner? Yes, we do. So Peggy came down, and it was her. The woman he had seen in his dreams, that he kept seeing and referencing to, it was her. So now he says, I need to talk to you. And they go out and they have coffee or lunch or whatever. And he says, you are the person I'm supposed to be with. And my whole life I've been waiting to meet you. And she was looking at him like, okay. All right. And I interviewed her. And she said, all right. Okay. And they married ever since. And he passed away about a couple months ago. Very precise guy. I was very nervous because when I filmed him and then cut the movie together, it took me about a year. I had never gotten his permission. You're supposed to do that up front. But I didn't want to step on any toes. If he didn't like it, I didn't want to do it. But I sent it to him, and he wrote me this really lovely note where he said, you know, you really nailed it, and good job, et cetera, et cetera. And we emailed each other maybe a couple times. So when he showed up in a restaurant with Jennifer Schaefer 2 months ago, and she went, that guy's here. I go, what guy? She said, Morton. Morton? Who's Morton? Newton. That guy Newton that you know. Oh, Michael's here. Okay, what does he want to say? He's got a message for, and he named like 3 people that work in his organization. I wrote it down. Very specific. They need to do this, they need to do that. I said, so Michael, what are you working on? He said, I'm working on helping people communicate to the other side. I said, are you working on, you mean people here to communicate over there? He said, no. Working on people over there. He said, I'm calling it noetics. For those who are familiar with noetics, it's the science of ESP. Jennifer wasn't aware of it. I wasn't aware of it. I mean, I'd read a Dan Brown book where they talked about it, but I wasn't aware, I had to look it up. When I got back to my car, there was a text message that had written itself on my phone. You know, you push a couple of buttons and then it... So the first 2 letters were MN, Michael Newton. The next letters were mnemonic. It's the word mnemonic, which means a memory exercise, right? I looked up mnemonic. Turns out it comes from Mnemosyne, the goddess of memory. The Greek myth is that when you die, you take a drink from the river Mnemosyne, and you remember all your lifetimes. And when you come back to a lifetime, you take a drink from the river Leth, which is the river of forgetfulness. So I thought, wow, that's a pretty profound accidental tweet on my phone. So Michael, you know, listen, and for people who work with Michael, you don't want to say, Michael so told me to tell you. It's, you know, it's really rude, I think, you know. Your dead relative just came through. Unless they accept it and they believe it and they hear it and it makes sense to them. So that's why I don't repeat what he said to them. You see, it's private, whatever. But in terms of Michael, yeah, I feel like I'm still having a conversation with him. Last Thursday, again, I was filming a session with Jennifer. She said, he's making fun of me for calling him Morton. Okay. Now what did he want to say? Oh, one thing he said. I've been telling people, if you want to talk to a relative or somebody who died, and I say take out a picture of your loved one and meditate on it, and then think about the moment that photograph was taken and bring them to life. And while you brought them to life, ask them a series of questions. And I asked him, is that okay? Is that like a good idea? He said, no. It's too busy, Rich. Keep it simple. When you tell people to meditate, they think they have to go to a yoga class to learn an exercise. Just tell them simply, say the name of their loved one, and they appear. I said, do they say it aloud or in their head? He said, it doesn't matter. I said, so how does a person know they're not making up what they're hearing from their loved one? He said, when they ask a question, and before they can finish the question, they hear the answer. So that's from Michael Newton. All right, I'm going to go sign books if you want them. Thank you.